Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Brony Debates Live with Ro Kholi. Take it away, sir.
This is Ro Kholi from War Machine Custom Merchandising.
War
What's up, everybody?
Machine Custom Merchandising. Yeah, so that's a new thing because the last time we had you on, it was something else, and you were just telling us before we went live here that now it's that now we're not going with the old thing anymore. Are you at liberty to tell us what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think last time we had me still as War Machine merch, because that is my main thing. But we were doing me and my co-host were doing a new metal podcast through notfest.com called New Pod, and yeah, I mean, I guess from what I understand, I don't know if there's anything beyond that, but from what I understand, our numbers weren't doing what they wanted. But I was really hoping that this year we had some really good guests lined up that were going to help our numbers increase dramatically, but guess they didn't want to really give us the shot on that. So it is what it is. So no more new pod. It's War Machine merch all the way. That is what I do every day, all day, all night.
Alrighty then. So I'm gonna come circle back to you on that for in a couple of seconds here. But firstly, we're gonna get some prerequisites out the way. Firstly, thanking everybody who supports the podcast and supports my channel monetarily, especially on the $10 and up tier, such as Princess Heather Blossom, Shady Oak, Autoknight, Emerald Spencer, Senko, DJ, Rain, Billy, Alden, Easy Mode, Kanto, Mr. Sonic, Alicia, Calbeck, StarChaser, VentureCorp, Willyzin, Icanus, Vulpecula, Raptors Talon, Jimmy, and Malcontent. Check out that link tree in the description. Check out my link tree to see how you can support my channel and what you get returned. Now then, so we're talking today about whether or not bands having reunions, like the original bands having reunions, but maybe for whatever reason it's not a complete reunion. For whatever reason they can't get all the original members there. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And this was Cruiser's idea. And so Cruiser, give me a minute and tell me why you wanted to talk about this.
Well, there's been a couple of reunions that's happened, both bands that Ro and I are both very familiar with, Pantera and Static X. Now, both these bands have members who are sadly no longer with us, but the members that are still there managed to get back together to do a reunion. And there's this big discussion as to whether or not if these are legit reunions or just cash grabs.
Interesting. So, Ro, there's a couple of
Yes.
people in the chat who don't really know who you are or what you do. So, can you give us a little bit about yourself real quick
Sure,
before I
sure,
get
sure,
your
sure.
opening thoughts?
Sure. Let's see. Where do I start? Okay. Let's see. How can I start this without getting too long-winded?
Well, in the
Um,
beginning there was darkness, and God said,
yes,
"Let there be
exactly.
light," and there was light.
Yes. And then next thing you know, the brown Satan was born. No, so basically, I used to work at a bunch of different record companies, doing street marketing and a lot of other types of marketing, a lot of event marketing. And then eventually that transitioned to me starting my own company, which is called War Machine Merch. And we make merch for tons of bands and events, conventions, trade shows. God, we do custom action figures, we do custom Funko Pops, we do all sorts of crazy stuff. I work with everybody from Drake and Beyonce to Megadeth and Slayer to Motorhead to Taco Bell, Stern Pinball. I work with everybody. So I make merch all over the place. So that is basically what I do. If you want to check us out, it's warmachinemerch.com. Pretty easy. And you can see a bunch of the stuff we've done, people we've done stuff for, but definitely take a look at the custom action figures and custom pops because those are definitely a lot of fun.
I just dropped the link to the store in the chat and updated the description with it. So that's pretty cool. So tell us what you think about the topic, Ro.
So working at a bunch of different record labels and I've been on tour with a lot of the bands, especially some of the bands that Justin brought up, uh, like Static X and Pantera. I've been on the road with those guys a bunch in the past. Slayer, a lot of these bands, and to be perfectly honest, he brought up a term which I'm not a fan of when it comes to this sort of thing, which is cash grab. Um, I don't believe that anybody who tries to do a band on any sort of level is a cash grab because there's so much work that it's it's more work than you could ever imagine to put into something that to be considered a cash grab, you know? Because there's production, there's touring, there's promotion, there's marketing, there's booking, there's publicity, there's a million different things that need to happen if you're going to be doing even Motley Crue or one of these huge bands. They still have to do rehearsals, they still have to do all of this stuff. None of the stuff is easy. So I don't ever look at any of the stuff as a cash grab. I think sometimes the only time I think something's a cash grab is just when a band kind of phones it in a little bit, like that's when I'm kind of like, all right, put some more effort into what you're doing. Like for instance, I saw the Pixies one time and they looked like they just rolled out of bed and they just got on stage and started playing a bunch of songs they've known for 30 years. And there was no production, there was no anything. And I was kind of like, all right, like if people are here to celebrate your band and the music you put out, like put a little effort into it. Sorry, can we swear on here? I forgot.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Put a little fucking effort into it. So that's kind of my thing. So when I look at the Static X thing, when I look at the Pantera thing, Slayer's gonna be doing a bunch of dates, I honestly don't have a problem with it. My only thing is you gotta fucking bring it. You gotta bring it. You gotta bring the energy. You've got so for instance, I saw Pantera on this run and I thought it was incredible. I thought, everybody was going crazy. The energy in the crowd was great. The energy off the stage was awesome. Everybody was there for that same reason. When I saw Static X with the new singer, same thing. It was like the whole place was jumping and it was really great to see. But I saw Stone Temple Pilots at the Aftershock Festival in Sacramento a few years back, and it looked to me like a bunch of old aging dudes playing Stone Temple Pilots covers. That's what it looked like. It didn't have this feel of, I don't know, maybe Weiland. I mean, granted, the dude was on so many drugs, but there was a certain amount of wildness to him on stage as a frontman, but without that wildness, they all just look like a bunch of dudes playing music. So I think but when it comes to this sort of thing, when you have some of these bands that have that reunited and are touring again, especially a lot of new metal bands and whatnot. In some cases, I mean, some of these new metal bands never stop, but in a lot of other cases where they're like, all right, cool, we can try to recapture this glory. I'm of the mind where I'm like, okay, give it a shot. I do feel like there needs to be at least one member in the band from the original iteration of the band. So for instance, you have like Fear Factory, which only has Dino, but when I saw them play, they were crushing. They were amazing. Same thing with Machine Head. Rob Flynn is the only original member, and they were crushing. So yeah, I mean, to say reunion, yeah, I mean, if the people are still alive in those bands and they all get together and do it, yes, that is a reunion. But I don't think that if there's one member of the band and a couple of other people there that weren't in the band, I mean, a reunion has to be at least between two people. So it's like in that case, I think you have to have at least two people then in a band to call it a reunion.
Yeah.
Yep.
A follow-up question I have to that, and I should, be transparent in disclosure as well. I know very little to nothing about music. The rest of my family is musical. I'm not. Anything I know about music is comes from helping my younger brother with his band or whatever crossover or compatibility the music industry and the way it works crosses over with film or television production, because that's what I specialized in. So I know very little to nothing. But one follow-up question I have sort of relates to what you were saying with bringing it and bringing, I guess the energy there. When
Right.
say you get these guys and and I'm just gonna randomly throw out Kiss as an example because Kiss has been around since like the 1970s or something like that, and these guys
my
are
favorite band.
probably. Yeah, they're probably what are they coming up on their 70s, 80s, something like that, right? And these band members, and are they gonna, get out there in the armor and the paint and you rock out as hard as they could before, and somebody's gonna need to take. I'm gonna be really egregious right now. Somebody needs to take their meds in the middle of the show. Someone throws out their hip. Should people this old really be, you know, is it reasonable to ask somebody like that to bring the same energy that they might have brought when they were in their 20s, high on cocaine and God knows whatever else?
Well, the irony of everything you said is so kind of funky in its own way.
Yeah, break
as a
me
huge
down
Kiss
here.
fan,
I know I'm
yeah,
wrong,
for
so
sure, for sure.
educate me.
No. I mean, but again, that's what this is all about is kind of taking those preconceived notions and sort of breaking them down so that people really know sort of where everything is.
That's what
So
my
a
show's
lot of
about.
people
Yep.
always look. Yeah, exactly. A lot of people look at Kiss, especially, and it's a great example, to be honest with you, as a band that's like, oh, is this their 19th end of the road tour and all the, just all this sort of stuff. Same thing you sort of hear about like Nickelback, kind of these butt of jokes kind of thing that people are just like, it's like, wow, if you scrape the surface just for half a second, you'd find that all of that is wrong. So the thing is this: number one, yes, those guys are in their 70s. Gene is 75. Paul, I believe, is 74. I saw their last 3 concerts, two in Madison Square Garden and one in Baltimore right before it, and Gene is walking out in 40 pounds of latex, you know, and all things considered, like you could be like, well, Rolling Stones are still doing it. Yeah, Mick Jagger comes out in barely a t-shirt and jeans. Like, there's a big difference between those two kind of things. If anything, Kiss is a very extreme example because there are no bands of their age and ilk that are doing half as much as what those guys did. Between Paul ziplining across the entire venue to another stage, Gene coming down, being hooked up to things, blowing the fire, the whole thing is such a spectacle. Hell, I just saw Tool, and Tool's show is a big lighting spectacle and everything. But those guys aren't doing nearly as much as a bunch of 70-year-olds. So while people can look at something like Kiss and be like, oh, well, those guys, it's like, it's not like anybody's forcing them. They have more than enough money to not do this, but they do it because they're like, cool, like we can still do it. However, I think they got to that point where they were like, okay, we are in our 70s. This is getting really tough. This is getting really, really tough to do. And so I'm glad they called it quits when they did. I know each member of the band will do their own solo thing, and that's fine, but you're not going to see Gene dressing up as a demon for any kind of show or anything like that. Anything he does now is just going to be him in regular clothes.
Cruiser, what do you think about all this?
The fact that they wear costumes, is definitely helps because they can easily hide, their age. But costumes aside, but what about when you look at a band like Motley Crue? Because everyone has said because they've been the butt of a lot of jokes too. Because Vince Neil is you can't really understand the guy.
Yeah.
So do you think someone like Motley Crue should have stayed retired?
Okay, Motley Crue is a very interesting point. The thing that pisses me off about them is that their big thing was, oh, these bands say they're gonna quit and then they never do, and then they signed contracts saying they weren't gonna play anymore, and then when they decided to play again, the reform, whatever, they were like, screw contracts, and I'm like, okay, to me that's literal straight up hypocrisy. In the case of somebody like Ozzy, I remember he went on his retirement tour back in like the 90s, and then he was like, I'm bored. Retirement sucks. So he did a retirement sucks tour. Okay, cool. At least you're saying, like, I tried the retirement thing. It didn't work out. All right, this is my post-retirement tour. Screw all of you guys. But when Motley Crue did it, they signed contracts. That was their whole thing, was like, we're standing behind these contracts. And then they literally are like, no, we're not. It's like, I'm like, wow, that's literally the definition of no integrity whatsoever, is to sign something and then to just literally go back on it. So that's why, but then at the same time, Motley Crue, yeah, I mean, last time I saw them, I thought they were garbage. Somebody told me they saw them recently and that they weren't that bad. I have no desire to see them just because every time I've seen them, it's just been like, wow, like this just gets worse and worse. And mind you, when it comes to Kiss, you know, Paul's voice was hurting, dude, by the end of those shows. Like, his voice was hurting. You know, homeboy's 74 years old. Like, yeah, sorry, man, he can't carry that love gun note all that, you know, as much as he used to. I mean, that's just the way of things, you know. So when people
Cat
are
on
like,
a box.
oh, what's that?
Your cat's on the box, just like...
Is he? Oh, yeah, monkey's up there. You know, so yeah, he's a climber. But yeah, so
Beauty
so
too.
it's like he, you know, they all realize that this has got to stop somewhere, you know. So better for them to stop it on their own and be like, cool, we did it on our terms, everything on our terms, and now we're done and we're good, you know. A lot of people have a you know, bad feeling or a bad taste in their mouth about Slayer playing these shows because they were like, we're not going on, but their whole thing was, we're not going on tour anymore. All right, cool. So they're going to play a couple of festival shows in the US. Yeah, it's not exactly a tour, you know, but at the same time, to be like, oh, that's a cash grab. It's like, do you realize everything that goes into putting Slayer out on tour? Like, or even just doing these dates? You still have to fly or ship production everywhere. You still have flames. You got pyro. You got lights. You got rehearsal. Like, again, all of that stuff. Like, you can't just do. I mean, even the Motley Crue thing. As much as I don't like it, or I don't really particularly care for them live, um, you know, their stage show is not something that is. It's not exactly a turnkey kind of situation where you're like, okay, just hit the light switch and Motley Crue's on stage. It's like, that's not at all how it works. There's so many working parts to the whole thing, you know. So to even do a crappy reunion tour still takes a lot, you know. But I don't have a problem with it though, you know.
Yeah, and there was even another article that I read with D. Snyder and Twisted Sister, another person who said they never want to do a reunion.
Right.
However, he said all these offers from festivals and shows are getting too big for them to ignore. Like
Yeah.
the money that they're offering is like, guys.
Right. That's kind of it, you know. But again, it's like, even if Twisted Sister said, fine, we're gonna do this reunion tour, okay, like that's that opens up a brand new can of worms for those guys. Like, remember, as my good buddy Doc Hoyle always says, he always goes, every night you play is somebody's Friday night, you know. So they buy their ticket from Ticketmaster or whatever. They go to the show, they get their beer, they get their merch, they see the bands, they're all great. They get in their car and they go home. Okay. What they're not thinking of is everyone who's got to break down the lighting rig and all the roadies who have to take everything off the stage. Like, nobody's thinking about that stuff. You know, they just go, well, the band's just on stage playing songs they know. Wow, that would be like literally like, well, you know, you just get up and go to work and do the same thing you did yesterday. It's like, okay, I'm an architect. You know, like, it's like there's, you know, there's different levels of it. And when people don't know, when they don't know those nuances, it's very easy to dismiss. You know, even if Nickelback, who doesn't really look okay, cool, these like a bunch of regular looking dudes who come on stage and they play rock and roll, blah blah. Great, they're playing stadiums. Like, there's nothing cash grabby about that. They're putting in the work. You know, I don't care if you're Justin Bieber. Like, even Justin Bieber, he's got to practice and rehearse and do all this. Yes, is he rich? Of course he's rich, but he's still got to put in the work. He can't just be out doing blow all night and then, you know, be like, oh, cool, I got to hit the stage. It's like, no, that dude has to put his all into every single performance. Taylor Swift, any of these people, they have to put their all into a performance. So if you're going to get up there with, in a weird way, it's almost like if you're a band doing a reunion thing or whatever, and you don't put 100% in your performance, in a weird way, you're not only letting the crowd down, but think about all the people that work for you. You know, like, you're letting all of them down. All of their hard work means nothing because you can't get out on stage and do your job properly. You know, so that's about the only time when I feel that reunions are not a good thing, is when the bands come out and they're like, you know, how come I have to actually do something in order to make people happy? Like, why aren't you just happy to see me on stage? You know, even Rob Zombie, you know, that dude puts, I mean, if you look at his production and everything, like, there's no part of that that's just like, oh, well, he's just going to play Thunder Kiss 65, which he's been playing for the last 30 years. Yeah, but look at everything that has to go on around him that has to all work in order to bring you that show. You know, if he just came out and he was just like, yeah, Thunder Kiss 65, yeah, woo, you know, like, everyone would be like, wow, really, dude? Like, that's why I stopped seeing Marilyn Manson. His shows just started to go like this. I felt like
Really?
every show, the last
Uh,
3 shows I saw from him, I thought he was just phoning it in. And I just remember walking away being like, fuck you, dude.
That was a steep slope down gesture he made because my audience can't see your camera.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah,
Sorry. Yes.
shows were going downhill is what
It
he
was,
was saying.
yes, it was an upward incline and then they went down.
Yeah, because I saw the
Just stop
guy.
that.
Yeah, because I saw the guy on Ozfest 2001. That was, a pretty big year for the guy and the
Yeah.
festival in general, and it was huge. I
Yeah.
mean, massive. And that, but he was the act going on right before Black Sabbath. So yeah, of course it had to be big. But then when I saw him again at Ozfest 2003, he was like maybe the third or fourth act on the main stage, so his show was a bit smaller. But there was another word that people tend to throw out when it comes to these types of reunions, and that's tribute acts.
Right. So to
So-
me, a tribute act is when there's no original members. When you have no original members, then in my opinion, then, like, again, it's like, Pantera can't, Zach Wild and Charlie Benante can't start their own Pantera, even though they played in the band. It's like, if you have to still have at least one of the original people still in the band, in my opinion, in order to have something. But if you have no original members, I think then that becomes that's a hard what's it called? It's a hard thing to kind of square up when you're like, yeah, we're whatever band, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a band. I'm looking around my office like
Leonard Skinner, Saliva.
Saliva is a great example. Josie Scott was like the dude in Saliva, and it's like he's not in the band anymore, and so it's like everybody else kind of falls away. It's like nobody's original in the band. Then, in my opinion, like Sepultura is a great example. All right, when Max Cavalera left Sepultura, everyone was like, it's not Sepultura, but it's like, okay, well, you still have 3 guys in the band that were there since the beginning, so they can still call it Sepultura. Then when Igor, the drummer, and Max's brother left, people were still like, that's not Sepultura. The Cavalera brothers aren't there. Yeah, but there were still 2 members who had been there since the beginning, so they can call it Sepultura. But if everybody was new, no, that's not Sepultura. Then you have to call it something.
So here's a curious question: if does it matter which one of the band makes it whether or not it's original? Like, can it not be original if it's like a drummer? That's all that's remaining, or a bassist, or is it the original band until the vocalist leaves or the lead guitarist?
I think that's the whole thing. Is like, the vocalist is only one part of the band, and everyone likes to think that without the vocalist, then the band just falls apart, and that's not true at all. We've seen that with a lot of bands. We've seen that with Van Halen. We've seen that with a lot of different. There's been a ton of bands. I mean, Judas Priest had Ripper Owens for a little while. It was still great. But everybody looks at the front man or the vocalist as the main guy, but that's not always necessarily true. So in my opinion, it still has to have one original guy in it. Just because people don't realize that the drummer, wasn't an original member doesn't mean that it takes away from his history in the band and what he's put forth in the band. It's like, I mean, I wouldn't be like, oh, well, the lighting guy is original, like I wouldn't go that far.
Well, that's a techie. Nobody cares about
to be
him.
like somebody in the band and whatever instrument they play. I mean, I don't care if it's the original keyboard player. It's like, as long as that person was there in the beginning as part of the touring band, et cetera, then that band's name can live on.
Yes, I had another incident with another person who just refused to call this Pantera thing a reunion. He said that technically Rex and Phil were not original. Like, they had some other guys before those two. But the way I personally feel about it, like, whether from Pantera to Slipknot, no one gave a shit about these bands until they made it big. So
Right.
when they made it big, that's your lineup, not what came before it.
Well, it's very just critical. It's like it's a very criticism based thing. Like, okay, yeah, he wasn't part of the Yeah, I think you're right though, dude. Is that Pantera made it big with Cowboys from Hell. you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, if you're, okay, just because Rex wasn't on the original Pantera demo is one thing, but you know what? Phil, Rex, Dimebag, Vinny, like that was the Cowboys era. They play from Cowboys from Hell all the way to Reinventing the Steel. That's the era of Pantera, if you will. That's why it's like, I mean, look, think about this, right? Ace Frehley, okay? If he just tried to start a band called Kiss in a weird way, he actually kind of could, Paul and Gene would never allow that, but it's like, but at the same time, it's like, he could try, but like that's why they allow him to play Kiss songs when he plays live,
Mhm.
Remember you.
Is there a difference between a cover
Aw, the
band?
kitty.
I wish the
He's
chat. I
only a
wish the
Sphinx
chat.
cat, ladies and gentlemen.
I wish the chat could see the cat. Anyway, is there a difference between a cover band and a tribute band? Or
Yes, there is.
okay, what's the
A cover
difference?
band, typically will just cover the songs. A tribute band will actually go forth and emulate what the band was like.
Okay.
Now in certain situations, it's a very blurred line. Like for instance, I have some friends in a Pantera tribute band called Trendkill Revolution. The funny thing is that the guitar player and the drummer are brothers, much like Dimebag and Vinny, but they're also Mexican. And then the lead singer is Cuban, and the bass player is a white dude. So I mean, yeah, white guy can get away with kind of being the Rex of the band. That works. But everybody else in the band, doesn't, it's not like they're going out there with a pink beard and all these kinds of things, The lead singer is not going to shave his head to look like Phil. So in a way I go, okay, yeah, that is still a tribute band. But to me, it's, it's like, to me, I'm like, okay, well, the fact that there's two brothers that emulates what Pantera was, I think is kind of cool, But Pantera didn't have such a what's the word I'm looking for, um, image, you know. Pantera wasn't based on the image. Like for instance, if me and Justin decided we were going to do a Pantera tribute band, we could kind of do it because it's about the music, not about the image. However, if Justin wanted to do a Marilyn Manson tribute band, then he would have to kind of put on the makeup and the boots and look the part. Whereas with somebody like Megadeth, Slayer, Pantera, even Metallica, it's like these guys just come out and they do their thing, So image isn't really part of it. Same thing with if you're going to be in a Kiss tribute band, can't just be a bunch of yahoos that just get up on stage and just sing Kiss songs. You have to at least put on the makeup. You have to at least, like I wanted to start a Kiss tribute band called Dress to Kiss with some friends of mine because I was like, well, none of us really want to go out and buy armor and shit like that. But if you emulate the Dress to Kill album cover, which is basically just them in suits with their makeup on, I'm like, we could actually do that, and it would actually work in the confines of that. I don't have long hair. Maybe my friends don't have long hair, but we're going out there still putting forth that effort to make it a tribute sort of thing, as opposed to just being like, because also when it's a cover band, for the most part, anybody who calls themselves a cover band is typically doing covers of other things. I think if you're going to be, I don't think you would call yourself like a Sepultura cover band. You'd be a Sepultura tribute band, I think if you're going to be a cover band, you're going to be like, oh, we do 90s covers, or we do, new metal covers, or we do, like that kind of thing. I think if you're directly pulling a specific band like Primus or Slayer or Megadeth or something like that, then you're basically doing a tribute.
So, Cruizer, what do you look for when you see what you would describe as a cash grab? Because, like, I know Ro said he doesn't like that term, but obviously the term comes from somewhere for you. So, what does a cash grab look like to you when you're seeing what we're talking about tonight?
Okay, well, my first, at least the first example that I experienced to be a cash grab wasn't actually a band, it was a video game. It was The Walking Dead Survival Instinct, for anybody who remembers that game. Basically, they hyped up this game as being the precursor between Merle and Daryl Dixon before they got involved with the gang from the series.
Right.
And it was built up to be like, where you can play as the brothers. It was going to have this big, huge, expansive thing. You would have to go out on missions to find survivors and food, trying to kill off zombies. But then when the game finally came out, and keep in mind, this is for the PlayStation 3, it had PS2 level styles of graphics. You couldn't really when you got to pick which route you want to go, if you heard like dialogue being played, you knew your car was not going to break down. If the game was also extremely short, the zombies were glitchy as hell. There was invisible walls. Like I had spent like 50 or 60 bucks for this thing, and it's just meh. Considering all the hype you built up around this thing, I expected so much more. You couldn't even play as one of the brothers. They took that out of the game. So that was my first experience of this is a cash grab. Like the game is still playable, but after all that was advertised and it was just meh. That to me was the first cash grab I ever experienced.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to cash grabs like that, I mean, anytime a band puts out like a live record or a greatest hits record, I'm always not that I think it's a cash grab. I always look at it like, well, that's just like they're just trying to fulfill their label duties. But at the same time, it's like, I've heard bands that just kind of like, oh, well, we're gonna put out an EP, and it's like, two new songs and like 3 cover songs and 3 live songs, and I'm like, okay, really? And then they'll put out some kind of special edition right after it. I'm like, okay, that's just ridiculous. You're gonna put out the regular CD first, and then 2 weeks later, you're gonna release the digipack with extra stuff on it. Like, to me, that's where it gets cash grabby, when they take that product and then they try to serve it to you in different ways. It's like Taco Bell. It's like the same 4 ingredients just stacked differently. That's really what it is. And I don't like it when anybody does that. When they just take what is already there and then just try to serve it to you on a different plate and be like, no, it's a totally different meal. And you're like, but it's not. I can see the meal as the one I had earlier. And they're like, no, it's on a different plate. And it's like, that's great. That doesn't mean anything. So I think that to me is when it's a cash grab, is when it's like they're taking something that exists and trying to repackage it as something different. I think that's when it becomes like, so it's like if whatever, I'm going to take a Static X thing, like if they put out their, like, actually, I'm trying to think of a better example, but I'm just like, if they put out when bands put out like these multiple vinyls, that to me is like a cash grab, when they're like, well, yes, we're releasing this album on vinyl and we're going to do it in 15 different colors.
Oh, Jesus.
And I'm like,
yeah.
Why? What's the point of that? Because to me, they're taking the same thing and they're trying to get people to buy the same thing, just in a slightly different package, and it doesn't have anything additional or extra or anything added value to make it something that's worthwhile. That's kind of it, again, like, bringing it back to Kiss real quick. If they went out with no makeup on, and no pyro, but they were still charging stadium prices, that's a cash grab, because they're trying to just give you the same thing and being like, no, we're doing a stripped down version of it now. It's like, no, it's just less of what we had before, but you're still charging me the same amount. That to me is a cash grab.
Kind of like when people, and I'm pretty sure you've seen this, video game companies do this. The digital download and the physical copy are the same price, when you would think that the digital copy should be cheaper because there's no physical media there.
No physical property, right?
Yeah.
No,
and not only that, but also greatest hits albums are kind of pointless right now because you can just make a playlist on any musical streaming service.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I bring it up too.
Greatest hits are going to be a subjective thing from person to person.
Well, it ends up, there's that for sure. That it's but then it becomes like kind of the band thing of like, oh, well, what are our more popular songs? What are the songs that we play live mostly, that kind of thing, and then they'll just kind of put it out there. But again, it just becomes like, okay, greatest hits, okay. But then if they're just like, no, but it's greatest hits, or it's like it's the first album plus a live song, it's like, okay, like that's pointless. Or like what Justin was saying, nowadays you don't need a greatest hits record when you can just make a playlist. You know, what's the point? You know, that's why every once in a while, again, Kiss will come out with, you know, as much as I love Kiss, I'm a huge Kiss fan, a ridiculous Kiss fan. But yeah,
Can
sometimes
confirm, ladies and gentlemen.
but it's like sometimes they'll just do something where I'm like, okay, it's, you know, like for instance, they'll put out like some ninth greatest hits, and I sit there and I go, okay, well, is it the band that's doing this, or is it the label that's just like, cool, let's just put out another one and see what happens? You know, all they have to do is just go, okay, do you guys want this? Okay, great, sign here, great, and then those guys get a check, and the record company takes care of everything else. You know, so it's like in a situation like that, it's kind of like whatever. But if they're gonna suddenly be like, we're touring on our ninth greatest hits record, I'd be like, really? Come on. That's just kind of ridiculous.
Well, that answers that for when I was going to pass that same question over to you, Ro. So, a question I have for Cruizer is, you know, in private conversation, you and I have, or you've told me about things that you've seen, some of the bands that you like do, usually Rammstein, that you would call a cash grab. So, why don't you tell us about that, Cruizer, and we'll see what Ro thinks about these situations.
Okay, well, one thing you could technically count this as a bit of a cash grab here because one thing that we discussed the last time we had Ro on is that a lot of bands will do VIP packages at concerts where you get like, you know, this pretty cool treatment, some exclusive merchandise, and usually you get to meet the band or, you know, you get like something signed by them, which is very cool. I mean, we all, you know, looked up to all these, you know, rock stars and musicians, and what greater experience could you have than just meeting them? Because for me, where I am seated at the show doesn't really matter to me. What matters is that you're there. Okay. I mean, there you can either be at work, but instead you're here at the stadium seeing Rammstein, this huge behemoth of a stadium rig. However, Rammstein will not do that. They don't do VIP meet and greets. They don't do Comic-Con appearances. They'll occasionally do like some, you know, public meet and greet or public signing, but it's once in a blue moon. And I honestly believe they do that so that they would sell more merchandise, because the more merch you purchase, the more closer you feel to your rock star. And like when I saw them in Philadelphia, there were they were raffling away meet and greet ticket passes. There would select 10 winners per tour date. However, each date had like 150 entries, so the odds of you winning was less than 1%. And I think the reason why they do so little of them has nothing to do with them being from Germany. I think it's just so that they can sell more merchandise. And some of the merchandise they put out, I think it'd be a bit ridiculous. I mean, there's like a new T-shirt with every single single. When they did their the music video for Pussy, they released a dildo set. I mean, complete with
at least it's
lube.
on brand.
Yeah. And so I just feel like some of this stuff is just meant for another example is Baby Metal. Because they don't do meet and greets, period. They did one meet and greet throughout their entire career, and that was it. And whenever you bring it up to fans, like it's bad they don't meet their fans, they just call you a creep. And meanwhile, they're putting their logo on everything. Like they were selling Baby Metal branded duct tape. It's like, what the hell is this? So I think a lot of this merchandise is cash grabbing to milk their fans for every cent they got when they won't even give them like a signed photo.
Okay, so that's where I have to disagree. In that a lot of times when it comes to merch, that is a merch company thing. You know,
Really?
the bands always have a say in kind of what merch gets made, but when it comes to touring merch, that's the merch company. The merch company is the one that sets all of that up. They give the bands a big advance and they go, okay, Baby Metal, we're going to give you $500,000. Okay. And here's your $500,000 advance. So now we get to make $500,000 worth of stuff that we can make for you guys. And they basically go, great, let us just, authorize the artwork and make whatever you want, So then whatever their, let's XYZ merch, merchandising, whatever it is, we'll be like, all right, great. We sold $500,000 worth of stuff. And we're going to give you a royalty of everything that sells after that. At that point for the band, they're like, cool, it's just checks that come in. You know, but like
Really?
when it comes to touring, yeah, when it comes to merchandising, there's gonna be your merchant like if you are in XYZ merchandising company, you're going to have your touring department that handles everything that has to do with touring. You're going to have your retail department that's going to handle everything that goes to Hot Topic, FYE, you know, the JCPenney, whatever, you know, Target, etc. You're going to have a bunch of different kinds of departments that handle this stuff. None of it is really band related. The band just goes, okay, great. You know, so the record label or excuse me, the merch company will be like, all right, cool. You know, that Baby Dub Metal went out with Death Clock. Great. How many items are we allowed to have? Okay, you can have 15 items. Great. Well, we're gonna do this the CD, the cassette. We're gonna have 3 shirts, 2 hoodies, da 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 da. And that's it. Now, as far as like meet and greets go, I mean, there are some bands that do like doing it just because it does give them a little bit of extra cash. So if you look at somebody like In This Moment or Static X or whatever, you know, they're not selling Ramstein or Kiss numbers, you know. They're not selling those kinds of merch numbers, so they really kind of need everything they can get. Whereas when you have someone like Ramstein, it's like not only that with Ramstein, that's why they can make so much stuff and whatnot, is because the money that they got from their merch company is enough to fund them for a really long time. On this last tour that they did, when they did Philly and LA and all these kinds of things, they had 65 semis. 65 for that entire production. 65 for those of you listening at home. 65 18-wheeler semi trucks going from location to location, setting up that whole rig for one night. Typically they did 2 nights in a few places, but for one night they go, the band flies in, the crew sets everything up, and then the band leaves and they fly to the next place, and the crew has to break all of that down and then haul it to the next place, you know. So it's like when you're talking about, you know, a band like Ramstein, yeah, like they're gonna sell whatever they can put their name on, and they're gonna put all sorts of stuff out there in order to do it. But at the same time, like what they're getting paid to play those shows easily justifies having all of that. But the merch companies are the ones that go, okay, this is what we're selling. You know, this is exactly what we're selling. It's very rare for the band themselves to be like, well, I only want 4 t-shirts. I mean, they might say that, but you know, the band leaves that up to the merch company to do that. You know, whether I mean, when it comes to baby metal and meet and greets, I mean, these are young Japanese girls. Unfortunately, yeah. If like people are like waiting, if it's just a bunch of like middle-aged dudes waiting in line to get their autograph, kind of weird, kind of.
Well, they're in their mid-20s now. They're not babies
still,
anymore.
It's I mean, the baby aspect of it, but it's just middle-aged dudes ogling Japanese girls is really.
I think they could at least sell them like an authentically signed photo at the very least.
Well, the thing about that is, that's another like separate conversation that I've been wanting to have on this show, and I know exactly who to ask to come on, but that's part of the problem with just kind of Japanese idol culture, in that they are very much more likely to get those creeps. And there's, in my opinion, they don't really do much about it because it brings them a lot of money. But that's a problem that's been endemic to pop culture as a whole for a long time.
Right.
So that type of thing there is part of the reason why. And yeah, usually when, like in Cruiser, you know, thank God and good on you that you are the exception to that. But by and large, people that insist on that kind of thing are they turn out to be creepy. And usually if they, especially after they had just one
time.
And if it was the first time, they're like, okay, nope, we can't, we got these dudes creeping on these, at the time, 16, 17-year-old girls. Nobody wants that.
Right. That's exactly it. And it's like, and again, it's like, we like to look at ourselves as like, that wouldn't be me. I would never do something like that. But there's just too many people that don't have those boundaries, that don't have that, that don't have that sense of, that sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? Courtesy, I guess. I don't know. That's not even the word I'm looking for, but I think it says it right.
Self-awareness. tact.
Yeah, that's kind of tact. I think that tact is really the right word. There's a lot of people. I mean, not for nothing. When I do San Diego Comic-Con, I'll tell you just a goofy side story. Like people are just oblivious to their own behavior or how bad their behavior is. So at my booth at San Diego Comic-Con, we had somebody doing a signing at my booth, and people were leaning over the table he was signing at to see if they could get to something, and it was like, you don't see the line of people and this guy signing at a table at this booth. Like, it's like they just are like, they just don't care, And again, that's all it takes. So all it takes is one person in Louisville, Kentucky, or New York, or Boston to make them feel like, okay, this does not feel safe right now, And especially when you have a band like Rammstein, it's even weirder because those guys are very sexual in nature. A lot of their lyrics and their material is very sexual in nature. And when that kind of thing happens, then you have people showing up to these meet and greets with really weird shit. And again, it doesn't take much for, or you get some female fan who, decides that she wants to stick her tongue down this guy's throat, and they're like, nope, we're done with this. No more of that. So, and to think about, and when you really think about it too, a lot of people are still very much, while COVID is not really what it was a couple of years ago, people are still weirded out by that sort of stuff. They're still weird. I mean, I go to comic conventions all the time, and the person who's signing still has a mask on, which I look at it and I go, okay, like I get it, because you're trying to talk to people are talking to you, like stuff is flying back and forth, and then next thing you know, this person gets sick, and can't act in their day job, or can't do whatever it is. So it's like a lot of times that's what ends up turning a lot of people off on some of these sorts of situations. And with Baby Metal, when you have the language barrier and the fact that they're like cute Japanese girls, I think those two things become very it's a volatile situation, especially for them. I remember when Kitty was on tour, it's like their parents were out on tour with them, and it's like, you're talking about a bunch of testosterone fueled kind of music, and then you have these girls who are like 17, and like the crowd is mostly guys, so it's like, do you want to have a meet and greet like that too? Like, I don't know, that could be weird. That's why a lot of times they like to do it at a place like a store or something like that, because then there's less chance of something like that happening. But some people are just like, nope, not doing it at all. And I respect that. It's like, it's a bummer when that does happen, but I can't help but think that the people who don't do it, something happened to make them not.
Well,
Cruiser, do you have
bandmate
any
it is
thoughts on
then.
that?
Bandmate it is, because they actually at least do give their fans autographs. Starting out, when Baby Metal first started out, I was definitely okay with them not doing it because they were very young girls. But when you get to your mid-20s and now approaching your 30s, it's like, can we, like, again, at least offer them like an authentically signed picture?
Yeah, I mean, but again, that's a management and merch kind of situation.
Yeah, that's one thing that a lot of their fans are telling me, that it's all the guy who created the project is this guy who goes by the name of Koba Metal, and they tell me that that's up to this guy, because Baby Metal it wasn't like an actual band that kind of came together with like individual members. It was put together by an agency. But regardless, I still think their musicians are, yeah, say whatever you want about the girls, but their musicians are just incredible. And I just think to kind of lead fans on and not do something like say something like, yeah, here's some signed photos for you guys that we all put together. Like, it just seems kind of.
You also have to remember with something like Baby Metal, they're being Japanese, they have a very different take on a lot of the things that we as Americans feel are just sort of givens out in the world. So you got to also look at the cultural aspect too, in a situation like that. And also when you really think about it, the in a situation like that, when they don't allow something like that, it does make the fans clamor for more as well.
That's why
Yeah, and
I'm saying, because
the
it makes them buy more merchandise.
That
You
was
know?
one question. That's a question I was going to have. When I eventually have that dedicated debate, is does, because we got this problem with creepers in these fandoms. Does the fact that they're so conservative and close to the chest and don't do a lot of interacting drive a lot of that, or does it is it unrelated? These are questions I want to ask somebody who's closer to that specific industry or has more experience with it. But
Sure.
I think we're talking ourselves in circles at this point. What else we got?
Well, the other thing too is that I remember Ro, as you know, Kiss is actually converting themselves into avatars for it to continue. And a lot of people are a bit hesitant on this idea. Now, however, they're not the only band who plans on continuing after all their primary members are dead and gone. Another example, this is Trans-Siberian Orchestra. Now, I know you're not a big fan of theirs, but that's not the point. The point is that they plan on having this continue even after the primary musicians and songwriters are dead and gone. But no one seems to be batting an eye at this. Would you say these might constitute as cash grabs?
No, not necessarily. Just because, again, the amount of money that company paid, that how much they paid for Kiss's brand and all that. I mean, they paid what, $300 million. I mean, you know, it's like for Kiss. I mean, in my opinion, they've earned that part of it. What happens after this point? Again, they'll consult with the guys about these avatars and whatnot, but in the end, it's like I don't look at it as a cash grab just because it's. But you know what? Actually, sorry, let me take that back. I don't know if it's a cash grab yet because they haven't
Mhm,
actually done anything with it yet. If
mhm.
what they give us is like, oh, see the Kiss avatars on pay-per-view doing their first live concert, and it's basically just a Kiss concert with the avatars, that's gonna feel like a cash grab. So I don't know if it is one yet, and I don't think there's a way to know that until they actually give us something to see. All we've seen so far is basically what the equivalent of you know, just CGI is. That's
Mhm.
all we've got. That's all we've seen. So I don't know if they're when they do something with these avatars, are they gonna do some kind of crazy retrospective where all four of them are running through each album, or are they, I have no idea. So it's too premature for me to even think about that being a cash grab. But I mean, if there's my whole thing is this too. If there's a company out there that's going to give you $1 zillion to do, for them to do something with your thing, I'm not going to say no to anybody to take that money. You know, I mean, again, it's like there's so many bands that, have been offered, like you were saying about Twisted Sister. It's like, you get to a point where they're driving some dump truck full of money to your house. Like, you're kind of like, with the makeup on, like, it's like, I mean, you look at like D. Snyder, it's like, wear my wife's lingerie again for, they're gonna give us, $800,000 per show.
At a certain point, it
Put on that
becomes
lingerie.
the money for nothing song.
Right.
Mm. As far as Trans-Siberian Orchestra goes, because this is kind of how I saw it, while TSO did start out as just a regular band, it did eventually grew into like an actual orchestra where there's a ton of people playing, and there's basically like a mastermind that's behind it, a conductor, if you will. And so once those conductors die, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal as it was compared to what Kiss is doing, just because uh TSO really thrived on storytelling and the music itself. They didn't really have a face to them, kind of like with Gene Simmons and the tongue and the whole
Right.
makeup and costume things. I mean, their shows are still spectacles, and I think people want to still keep seeing them, which by all means do it. But I think the reason why people aren't really saying much with TSO is because they were never really that kind of band. They were
Right.
never the kind like Kiss was.
Right. You weren't
Uh,
paying attention to them visually so much as the sonic awesomeness of it. Like that's I mean, for the most part, I mean, everything I've seen for Trans Siberian, like it's very much about the lighting and the music and everything. It's like in a weird way, it's almost like the like you were saying, like the spectacle isn't really on them as individuals. It's as them as a cohesive unit, putting out this music with this production and everything like that. Like it is that whole package, you know. And that's always the weird thing about it too, is like, you know, if you don't really have that kind of identity, like in a Nickelback kind of way or Creed or something like that, where you only know like one guy, you know, it's always a weird thing. That's why with Kiss or Static X, you know, where each band member has their own very distinct personality and identity, you know, in a situation like that, it's you know, it just that's what makes the difference for me.
And speaking of Static X, because I know you had some history with them, uh, when they came back and they had this Zero character,
Mhm.
there were some people who thought it was cool, but others thought it was distasteful and creepy. As someone who has a history, then what was your thought on it?
Um, I knew uh I know a lot of the background of a lot of the tension that was going on there, but at the same time, it's like I knew that the three original dudes were not going to make it distasteful or disrespectful. And the thing for me is, number one, everyone's entitled to their opinion. You don't like it, that's cool. Do you do you, you know, don't firebomb the concert or whatever. You know, just it's like that's your opinion. Okay, great. You know, people have different opinions on stuff. That's fine. So I know some people who simply with the Pantera thing, where they're just like, no, it's stupid. It's not that. Yes, I hear you, buddy. You know, it's stupid. It's you know, it's blasphemous. It's always okay, great. I get it. I totally get it, you know. But for me, having that history with them, I mean, I knew who it was gonna be. So I was like, all right, this is a guy who's toured with them a million times, you know. And then when I saw it, I was like, okay, cool. Like they did it right. You know, they did it. I felt like they gave it the respect that it needed. I think it was very much, I think it was just very tastefully done, in my opinion. Now, other people, I saw a meme that was like, oh yeah, they came back with a new guy dressed as the corpse of their lead singer. And I was like, okay, well, on the one hand, that's kind of funny, but on the other hand, I'm like, that's not true at all. You know, like, but I like the fact that they have this guy who is really, dude. Hold on one second. Sorry, guys.
Cat troubles, ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Oh, the kitties.
Not him at all right. Let's make sure he's all right. Anyway,
Uh,
so
he, he has returned with Mr. Bigglesworth.
yes, this is Legolas. Legolas the elf. So, but that's the thing. It's like when it comes to them, I think that having a Wayne Static, because they didn't have a Wayne Static lookalike. What they did was they sort of, in a really weird way, sort of reprogrammed Wayne Static. You know, so they
Mhm.
sort of created a Wayne AI, if you know.
Yeah,
And I
and to
and
be
I think, and personally speaking, considering the style of music and everything like that, I personally think it works. But I could be biased too because I love all those guys and I've always loved Static X.
well, as someone who does like Static X but doesn't have a history with them, I actually thought it was definitely a unique thing to try because for
And
those
that's
who,
the other
who
thing.
are not,
Nobody's ever really done anything like
yeah, because for those who don't know, when it comes to Static X, they are considered industrial metal, but not so much with keyboard synthesizers, but rather with techno. So they have this kind of electricity vibe to their sound.
oh, disco.
And yeah, evil disco as they called it. And when you look at this their singer Zero, they call him, it honestly feels like they did some sort of Frankenstein experiment to zap Wayne back to life and go, hey, we got to go on tour, let's do
Right.
this.
Well, that's why people say like, oh yeah, it's like, you know, they're resurrecting the corpse of the lead singer. And I'm like, kind of, that's kind of funny, but that is kind of what they're doing. But in my opinion, you know, given the fact that it's the three original members all signing off on it, I go, you know what? You know who knew Wayne Static more than anybody in the world is those three guys. You know,
Mhm.
those three guys have shared every kind of living space with him. They knew him inside and out. You know, so if anyone is going to do that and still get not only the permission but the acknowledgement and everything of his parents, you know,
Mhm.
it's like to me, okay, you can still have your opinion, but you know what? His parents are okay with it. The band is doing this. You know, it's not like some outside force or whatever. I think that's when it becomes okay. You know?
While we're still on the Static X topic, let me ask you about this moment that happened, because there was a time when Static X broke up, Wayne went solo, he wasn't playing the kind of crowds he was hoping, so he went to Tony Campos and offered to pay him like a salary to let him rent the name Static X without the other members. At that point, would you consider that to be a cash grab?
Yes. That was a very unfortunate cash grab. Because Wayne putting very little, in my opinion, he wasn't putting in a whole lot of work. I also felt like those performances were really phoned in. I was really, after seeing him play solo, I think I saw him about 4 or 5 times. I was always really disappointed when I left. You know, it was you could feel that it had taken this downturn. But to go back to our original thing, you know, if Wayne decided that he wanted to recreate Static X and get the rights to it and everything like that, he would be absolutely within his realm to do it. But with, you know, if Tony and Koichi and Ken all wanted to do Static X also, like, that would be 100% within their rights to be able to do that. You
So
know,
it's kind of like what you said earlier. He may have the name, but he did not bring it, essentially.
Static X, it wasn't Wayne Static and the Static X's. It was Wayne's, Tony, Koichi, and Ken. That's what Static X was, you know. And I think him trying to just kind of bring on a bunch of hired guns and everything took away from the identity of Static X, you know.
Hmm.
And I can
So,
imagine how that must. Go ahead, Brawny.
I was finish your thought there, but I was gonna say, does anybody got any one last point they want to make before we go into audience participation? But yeah, go ahead and finish what you were saying.
Okay. And actually, I do for another one after this. That must have also been hard for uh, the remaining members too, because I know Tony, he owned 50% of the name, and the fact that that name is going on tour without him, like that had to have must have broken his spirit.
Well, I mean, yes and no, because he was in the middle of playing with Fear Factory and Prong and a bunch of other bands. So he was, you know, the name Static X for him was just kind of like, I don't know, an unscratched off lottery ticket in a weird way. And then when Wayne was like, "Hey, I'll give you money for it," he was like, "Well, not like I'm doing anything with it. It's like a lawnmower that's sitting in the garage." And somebody's like, "Hey, I'll give you $500 if I can use your lawnmower." You're like, "Go nuts,"
Okay,
you know?
that
You
makes
know?
sense.
Yeah. So
And
that's the whole thing with that.
And the final point I want to ask about was going to Pantera, because the one thing that people keep pointing to is that Vinnie Paul did not want this.
Right.
Now, this was my take on it. I may love the guy, but I think he was stupid, because for number one, he thought, hell yeah, his side band was good. And they had, like, in my opinion, one good album that was their debut. And plus, it started out as a super group, but then de-evolved to a less than super group. They had all these musicians from pretty well-known bands, and then just came down to just Vinnie Paul and Paul Gray from Mudvayne.
I just want
Yeah,
to
But the other
throw this out there real quick. I don't know any of these names, but I saw Hell Yeah live in 2013, and they were freaking amazing.
and which again, they are. It never worked for me. I was never a Hell Yeah fan. But I mean, when you have all those guys in that band, like you said, it was like a super group. I mean, in my opinion, you can't not have a great show. That is for sure.
Mhm.
Whether or not you're gonna really go home and crank the record while you're working out or doing, you know, whatever the dishes is a different story. But when it comes to the Vinnie Paul thing, you know what? It's a legit concern amongst fans, in my opinion, that Vinnie Paul very much was against it, and he was against it because obviously something very personal was ripped from him, you know, and that is the type of thing that, you know, unless therapy really becomes involved, and Vinnie Paul is not a therapy guy, uh, but it's like, you know, unless therapy is involved, like getting through that is not something that most people can really come to on their own. So I think if Vinnie Paul was still alive right now, I think he would be hard pressed to say yes to this. But if they actually had the band sit down, go through like kind of like a grief counselor kind of thing, and let everyone say their piece, that could have changed things, you know. Or if they all just were in the same room together, you know, maybe that could change it. Maybe they just all need to go to this great spot in Arlington for fried chicken, and they'll all be like, "Oh my god, remember that? Oh my god, yeah," you know. And maybe they can hash it out. But unfortunately, we won't ever know that, you know. And
Mhm.
because we won't ever know that, you know, we go, okay, well, that's not what he wanted. Okay, great, but there's still two other dudes in the band, you know.
Yeah, I think it's kind of hard for people to realize that Pantera was not just the Abbott brothers. Rex and Phil still played a very big role in it.
Right, but when it comes to the splitting of the fandom, again, it's like Sepultura, it's like a lot of these things, you know, they just go, those are the two guys that I relate to because they're brothers or they're this or they're that, and the other two guys are cool, but they're not those guys, you know, and they really were very much, you know, this connective glue to it. You know, I mean, which is, and the funny thing to me is I'm surprised that um instead of just being like, all right, well, fuck you, Rex, fuck you, Phil, we're gonna continue Pantera without you. Like, why they didn't just do that? Pantera very much was their baby. Like they could have just been like, fine, fuck you too, and or we'll find a new singer and we'll just do that. Like, I don't know why they had to go totally like damage plan. You know, like I don't understand why they had to put Pantera behind them like that. Like I don't see why they couldn't just, well, I can't say why they couldn't just, that's very stupid of me to say, but why continuing the Pantera name wasn't like why
In the
they wanted to
cards.
put that, yeah, why they wanted to just put it to rest and then just create something new, you know. But again, that's their own decision. But you know, I think, like I said, unless those guys all went to group therapy together, I don't think uh I don't think it would have happened either.
Mhm.
I don't think Vinnie Paul would have done it,
Mhm.
not at
Okay,
all.
Brawny. Yeah, it said it had audience participation.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we only got a couple of questions from the audience here. But we got Nathan Duazu who said it's nice to meet you, Ro. And then he says,
And
what
Nathan,
do you think about Andrea Bocelli? He's my favorite tenor alongside his son, Matteo Bocelli. So what do you think
mhm.
about Andrea Bocelli, Ro?
I funny that you mentioned this. My wife is a huge fan, and I took her as a gift to see him at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles 2 years ago, and it was absolutely stunning and gorgeous and beautiful and really amazing. I had such an incredible time. I was like literally moved to tears at some points. He was doing duets with just different opera singers, and he was really just incredible. I mean, like that dude's voice was like it was powerful, and I don't know if anybody's ever been to the Hollywood Bowl, but the acoustics there are absolutely incredible. So to hear somebody like Bocelli, like I've gone there for Bjork, I've seen Iron Maiden there. I've seen a lot of bands at the Hollywood Bowl. And they always sound great, but when you have somebody whose voice hits those acoustics in such a way, it's a very different kind of situation and feeling all over. Um, so I love Andrea Bocelli. When he comes back, we will likely see him again because it really was, and it was kind of nice. It was like I got to, I like put on a suit. Like I don't ever go to a concert in a suit, you know. So it was kind of nice to sort of, you know, I'm always a metal, yeah, I'm always going to metal shows, metal festivals, all these kinds of things. So to go
I
to
have
like,
seen this man's Facebook page. Trust me,
yeah,
people.
but it's like to go to, you know, like you can't go to Andrea Bocelli and be like, oh, I'm gonna wear my Slayer shirt. Like it's like you feel like it's an occasion that you should get dressed up for. But the funny thing also about it being that I see concerts all the time, literally, you know, between 3 and 5 days a week almost. I'm seeing concerts, and when you go to some of these concerts and you see people who don't go to concerts and like kind of looking at this sort of like in a weird anthropological way, like look at the non-concert goer and what they do, and you see like just like some of them will just like they'll just like it's almost like they go grocery shopping at the concession stand, you know, so they just have like nachos and a Coke and a beer, and it's like You know, like, okay, it's like not your living room, but all right, no, that's kind of cool. Or they get really, really drunk. There were a lot of really drunk women at the Andrea Bocelli show. A lot of white wine was flowing that night. So yeah, that was, and so you just see like they're just kind of sloppy and everything because they don't go out like this. This isn't their thing. But Nathan, Andrea Bocelli was awesome. So I highly recommend him to anybody. It is quite an experience. It's not a rock show by any stretch of the imagination. It is a sit there and just take it all in kind of show. So yeah.
And
Actually, hold on.
I have
I know
pretty similar thoughts.
to the camera. I actually have Andrea Bocelli cufflinks that I got from the show here in front of me. So to let you know that
Nice.
I definitely dug it.
Yeah, we I think pretty similarly of Andrea Bocelli. I grew up with Pavarotti. I grew up in a
Yeah.
Pavarotti house.
Mhm.
So
When
that's
I worked at record stores, we the amount of 3-tenor stuff that we sold was astronomically high. It was insane.
mhm.
We got another one there, Brawny.
Yeah, we got one more. Mangle Muffet wants to know if we got any stories of tours that went crazy and overboard with the from the fans. Do we have any
Ro, I
crazy
believe
fan
this-
stories?
Oh my
Ro?
goodness, yeah.
Gi- give me
oh
give
my
me
God,
the give me the craziest one off the top of your head, and we'll
okay,
wrap this
off the
up.
top of my head. Okay, hold on, because now I have to sift through the sort of the Rolodex of concerts I've been to. Oh, there's so many. Okay, crazy fans. Crazy fans. Okay, okay. I got to give you a couple of mini ones because there's so many. When I was out on tour with Soulfly, and Ozfest 2000, Soulfly has a little tribal shield symbol that they use, and so I was like, oh, it'd be really cool to document all these people with Soulfly tattoos. And so in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is a Soulfly. That's a cool one. This is cool. But then you don't really realize when you see a really bad one. And when I got to like, where the hell was it? Cincinnati, I think it was. That's when you really saw some horrifying tattoos that people had. Like one guy had one that was on his entire back, but it looked like he tried to do it himself, like in the mirrors.
Oh.
So I have photos of all of these. I would love to dig those out. So yeah, so you saw a lot of really horrifyingly terrible tattoos. When I was on that same tour, Ozfest 2000 in Dallas, Pantera was on, and that was, that's their hometown, so everyone was going berserk. And I was just trying to go from one side to the other because I actually really needed to go to catering and get some food. And this dude came up to me, no shirt on, and the hugest foam cowboy hat you've ever seen, purple. And he just grabbed me by the shoulders. And when I was on this tour, I lost a lot of weight because I'd never toured before, and I didn't eat a whole lot of junk food. I just ate like catering, and when we stop at a gas station or a truck stop, I just get like milk and like something small, and so I lost a lot of weight. This guy literally took me by the shoulders, brought me into his face, like I was like almost kissing this guy, and he just screamed "Pantera" in my face so loud. It was almost like if you've ever seen like a cartoon or CGI where like the mouth just opens abnormally large, and just screamed Pantera in my face, and then took me and threw me like 40 feet, and like towards where I was going, which was nice. But he threw me so far and so hard that security was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know what the fuck just happened." And they were like, "Are you all right though?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think so." They were like, "Man, that guy launched you." I was like, "Dude, right?" Like, I felt like a cartoon character. So there was that. What's another good tour story? Oh man. Oh, this is tough to go through all. When I used to see Marilyn Manson, there was these two girls called the Slice and Dice Crew.
Oh,
Uh,
jeez.
they would carve Manson and Twiggy and all sorts of other stuff in their arms. And they were at every show. Like, well, I saw about 4 or 5 shows in a row when I was in New Jersey, and they were at every show right up front and making sure that their carvings were very obvious for Manson and Twiggy to see. That was definitely a pretty crazy one too. when I saw when I was out with Mindless Self-Indulgence. Actually, you're gonna like this show, dude. It was Monster Magnet. It was Mindless Self-Indulgence, Monster Magnet, Soulfly, and Ramstein at the Shrine Auditorium out here. And I love Mindless Self-Indulgence. I am a huge fan. I've been a fan of theirs since way, way long ago. And everyone fucking hated them. Like they hated them to the point where they were, you ever see people like snap coins?
Yep.
Just coins. They were doing that with pennies at the band. And I was singing along. So they were doing, and I was in the photo pit, and they were doing that to me too. So we're all just getting pelted with fucking coins. That was fun.
So speaking of mindless self-indulgence, why did they hate Jimmy Page so much?
Oh, I don't know. They hate him.
For those who don't know, they have a song called "I Hate Jimmy Page." Yep. That was the first song of theirs I ever heard. I'm like,
that was from Frankenstein. That was from Frankenstein. Girls Seem Strangely Sexy.
Yeah, I did see Mindless Self-Indulgence on Project Revolution 2007. Great show.
I love that band so much. But yeah, they're fans, or they're not, they're enemies, I guess you could say. Yeah, we're just, I mean, God, the amount of spit that flew through the air, it's like just trying to dodge all that. As far as I'm trying to think of what other crazy band
so
stuff.
I'll stop you there. Just so maybe I'll have you on another time just to tell stories. But I got one is that concert I mentioned was actually a music festival. I worked one day in the photo pit
Nice.
back in 2013, and they had, and that day who was playing, I remember Volbeat, Hell Yeah, Offspring, and Papa Roach. And that's there was a lot more going on that day, but that's who I remember. And
Right.
My story is with Papa Roach while he was playing. And I was already frustrated because I was not getting good pictures because he went on at like 7:45 and the stage was facing east, so that meant that he was just completely backlit by the setting sun. And I could get no pictures of Papa Roach, and I liked Papa Roach, and I was kind of looking forward to Papa Roach, and he liked to get down in the pit and get right up with the audience, and whenever he did that, all of the other photographers were just like right on him, and I'm like, okay, this is the only time I'm gonna have to get a good picture. I better try to anticipate his movements and be able to get inside of that crowd and get a couple of pictures while I'm out here working. So he does it, and I get in there with him, and I'm like backing up, like backpedaling because he's running towards the edge of the pit as fast as I can. I didn't get out of the way fast enough, which in retrospect, I will admit that's on me. I didn't get out of the way fast enough. He shoved me, like with two hands, just shoved me out the way. Get out the way, right? And a little more context. At this point in my life, I had been working in nightclubs and as a photographer, and I had developed this very fast instinct of if somebody touches me while I have my camera, deck them, because that's my livelihood. Do not touch my camera. And
Right.
the universe slowed down for me when Papa Roach shoved me, like going into the Matrix. And I could feel my fist clenching and like winding back. And then I retook in my surroundings and noticed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bouncers, all of which twice my size. And I was like, stop. And I did not punch Papa Roach in the middle of a set, thank God. But I almost punched Papa Roach in the middle of a song. And so that's... Wow. And then I got out of the way and went about the rest of my day and did not make any headlines that night.
Wow. Okay, wait. Okay. So I have one more too. I just thought of one.
Okay.
And this will be my last one. This one's crazy. And this is before I was in the music industry. It was Lollapalooza '92. I had never seen a lot of these bands, never even heard of a lot of them. This is my one of my first forays into, actually, it was my first festival. Holy shit, I never realized that. It was my first festival. So I didn't know what to expect. I went with this girl I had a huge crush on. And so and it was also the first time I ever smoked pot. It was literally the first time I ever tried it. So I'm walking around the festival and I'm stoned, and she asked me to watch her backpack. And so Ministry comes on at one point, and I'd never heard Ministry before. And it was like the soundtrack to the apocalypse. I mean, it felt so Mad Max crazy that I was just like, what? Where am I? Like, what's going on? I'm totally ready for, like straight up Fury Road type shit. And all of a sudden, like the pit starts opening up and opening up. And I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be in a mosh pit. I'm stoned and I have my friend's binoculars in our backpack. I'm like, I don't want to be. And so as the pit is widening, I start seeing why it's widening. And there's a dude holding his throat with this huge gash against his throat and just this fountain of blood going down his entire body, and he's just walking, leaving blood footprints in the sand. And I was like, what the fuck is Ministry? That's all I kept thinking was, what happens at these shows exactly? And I just remember being like, this is the most insane shit ever. And after that, I bought everything Ministry as I possibly could. But I'll never forget the look.
Jeez, I couldn't imagine watching somebody die at a concert and then being like, hey, I'm going to buy all this band's merch.
Yeah, seriously. It was so crazy, but I'll never forget the shine of the light on his blood flowing. Like, I'll never forget that as long as I live. But that was definitely like, and like I said, I was brand new to going shows too. So I was like, what the hell happened?
I'm kind of hung up on the fact that guy probably died.
Yeah, I'm either that or he was barely saved.
Let me well, we'll end on one from me here since we're all sharing stories. I was originally going to share my Ramstein one, but we don't have time for that. The very first music festival I went to was back in 1999. It was a what I call a radio station festival, where local radio stations would put on a music festival of the bands that they would play. And the one that happened down by me was called the Buzz Bake Sale. That year, it was 1999, so they had Kid Rock, Stained, Jimmy's Chicken Shack, for those of you who remember them, Power Man 5000, and Pennywise, and a bunch of others. Now, my dad dated some girl who ran a party rental supply store, and the Buzz went to her to get some stuff from her, and they also gave her some tickets. These were front row, dead center seats, and if you know anything about amphitheaters, they always have that mosh pit in the very front of the stage. So my sister and her boyfriend take me and my friend Joey with me, with us, and we're down front. We can't believe this. This is so incredible. And keep in mind, we're like 14. Our hearing is gone by the end of the night. But then my sister and her boyfriend are off in the techno tent doing God knows what. And Pennywise, the singer, gets on stage and says, all you people on the lawn seat, come down here where you belong. And this herd of people come charging from the lawn section down into the seated area. And he essentially started a riot. There were people climbing all over the place. And my sister is having a panic attack while tripping balls, no less. She's like, oh my God, my mother's never going to trust me again. I got to get my brother out of there. She's trying to tell security, I need to get my brother out of there. Like, ma'am, I'm sorry, you can't go in there. And
yeah, that's how people get trampled and crushed.
Yeah.
Like a Taylor Scott concert.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then suddenly, their set ends. They get charged a fine. And my sister and her boyfriend comes running down to our seats. Not one scratch on us. And they're like, my sister goes, are you okay? Yeah. Why? Was something supposed to happen? And keep in mind, like, she's tripping while scanning me to make sure I'm okay. It's like, yes, Megan, everything is fine. That was
you're lucky. You're lucky nothing happened though.
Yeah, I at the grand scheme of things, I am lucky. And then so she never left my sight again after that whole incident. And so the show's over. We're trying to head home. And they're still coming down off whatever they were doing, and it took them a while to figure out where we're supposed to go. So they had to stop at some gas station to try to figure out, how do we get back to Stuart, Florida? And they go in, and then her boyfriend comes running right out of the gas station, laughing his ass off. And we're like, what's so funny? And he goes, the guy's name tag in there spells out MAHBOOB.
My boob.
My boob. It was some Indian dude. No offense, Ro.
Oh my God, I've run into a few Indians with very with names that don't work in English. And so one of those like one of those was bad enough that I don't want to say it on air. But we can wrap that up there. Cruiser, closing thoughts on one thing you learned tonight.
I was interested to find out about the merchandise aspect of these bands. I did not see that coming. I still stand by my whole thing with the meet and greet thing, but I can dive into a bit more on that when you decide to do this other stream of yours. But yeah, the merchandise thing, I did not expect that at all. So the more you know.
Very good. And Ro, closing thoughts on one thing you learned tonight.
Let's see. Closing thoughts. You know what? Everybody's allowed their opinion. Just keep it at that. You don't like something, don't go. That's the way I look at everything. Something I learned tonight. Let's see. What did I learn tonight? Actually, I like the fact that you went to see Hell Yeah and all that, Brawny. I think that's actually pretty cool because going to festivals and stuff like that it's something a lot of as many people that do festivals, there's so many people who don't. And I think going to a festival is a very weird, necessary rite of passage for people, to be able to do one either with friends or really go out there and try and just do it on your own, and just challenge yourself. And I think that's always a cool thing. So I'm glad you got to see all those bands, dude. That's
it was a great night, and the pictures I got of Offspring that night I used in my portfolio for years and years because they came out really good. Especially with the limited equipment I had at the time. I worked that concert and got portfolio worthy pictures that I used for years and years off of a 55 millimeter lens, which if you know anything about cameras is nothing.
Yeah.
Your eyes are 55 millimeters.
Well, that's why it's nice to be up in the photo pit, so you can at least get some pretty decent shots and whatnot. Especially back then. I mean, people had digital cameras back then, but I don't think there was always going to be security is like no cameras, like that kind of thing. So it was a lot more strict back then. So being up front for those kinds of shows. I mean, when I first started my fanzine back in the 90s, I had a disc camera. It's like trying to take a picture from anywhere further than right in front of the stage, and you're not getting that shot. So having something like that and just being right up there is always nice when it comes to photography.
Yeah, and these days I carry a 300 millimeter, which is you can be at the back of an auditorium and get a medium close up of whoever's on stage.
Right, and then if you're in front of the stage, it's like, wow, I could see your pores.
Yeah. There was a guy in the Brony fandom for a while, and I did the photography for a lot of these conventions. And this guy's name is Tarby. He's a really good musician, one of the best the Brony fandom ever had. And I did a bunch of his concerts when he played it at the conventions. He ended up using a couple of pictures that I took as his album art.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which was an honor. But we're gonna wrap it up there. Ro, thank you so much for coming online.
Thanks for having me on. I always appreciate that. It's very cool.
Yeah, I feel confident saying that whenever these semi reunions happen, yeah, you can call them reunions because honestly, like especially if they're dead, what do you want them to do? Right. They would have loved to have had them, but Vinny and Dime are dead. I would love to see Static X with Wayne, but the dude's dead.
Yeah,
what do you want him to tell you?
So, yeah, with that, thanks to everybody who tuned in and stayed with us until the end. We gained
so
and
thanks for the
lost some
questions, too.
viewers over the
Mhm.
time here, and thanks everybody who supports the channel, especially the $10 and up tier, such as Heather, Shady, Autoknight, Emerald, Senko, DJ, Rain, Billy, Alden, Easy Mode, Kanto, Sonic, Alicia, Calbeck, StarChaser, VentureCorp, Willyzin, Icanus, Vulpecula, Raptors Talon, Jimmy, and Malcontent. You'd think with all these names I'd have to read, I wouldn't be broke, but here we are. And with that, I'm going to be playing a game tomorrow night with my good friend Neo Anton, so I hope you'll join me right back here at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And with that, we're gonna say goodnight. So yeah, stay safe, God bless, and say goodnight, everybody.
Hasta
Good night,
lasagna,
guys.
everybody. Don't get any on you.
Thanks for joining us.